Okay, so for those who couldn't make it today, this is the recording, and I'm Hilary Cole, a sleep consultant, and this is Kate Saunders, clinical counselor, parent coach, parenting ace up your sleeve. We're going to start today. I'm going to talk a little bit about sleep, and I'm going to talk about how important it is and why it's not one bit a selfish thing for you to want to get a full night's sleep. It's actually, I think, the best thing that you can do for your child, and we'll talk about why. So really, like, both Kate and I work with families who are working with challenges with their children, for many different reasons. But sleep is so tied into all of them that it just makes it a natural, logical fit for us to kind of share information together. Because really the goal is to help your child become confident and secure in their place of sleep so that they can be a resilient child throughout the day. So why we need sleep. This is me, by the way, down here in the corner when I don't have enough sleep. And you think I'm joking, but why we need sleep. It's a really, really important part of our brain function. Our brains do not shut down when we go to sleep. There's a lot going on in our brains when we sleep. And one of them is that we store memory while we're sleeping. All the things that we learned and we need to hang on to during the day, this is the time when we store those memories into a place where we can retrieve them later. So if, like, 8 years on, you still feel like you have mommy brain, there's a good reason for that. If you're not getting enough sleep, you're not storing the information that you learn in a place where you can retrieve it later. There's a lot of brain waste cleanup that happens. The byproducts of all of the work that your brain is doing at night, that needs to get flushed and cleaned out during the night, like all the information you don't need, but also just sort of to help your brain function without that fog. That kind of fog you wake up with that no amount of coffee is going to deal with. You need sleep for that. It helps with all of our thinking and all of our learning, optimal cognitive function, basically. To be at your best and to be able to use all the skills and resources that you have, you need to get enough sleep. It helps us regulate our own emotions. So we're going to talk a little bit about how important it is to help kids regulate their emotions, but it helps us regulate ours. As a parent, on less than 7 hours sleep. Well, 7 is the bare minimum. 7 to 9 hours of consolidated sleep is what we need. But on less than 7 hours sleep, you just can't be the kind of parent you want to be and implement all of Kate's great parenting advice that she's going to give us. You could read all the parenting books in the world, but if you don't get enough sleep, you can't use that information because, on 8.5, 9 hours sleep, I am sitting down with my kids and I'm saying, let's come up with a solution to the problem, guys. How do we work through this? And giving them options. And on 7 hours or less, it's like, give me the toy, you get in that corner, you get in that corner. I don't want to hear a word from either of you. And that's kind of all I've got. That's all I've got in my toolbox when I don't get enough sleep, as I'm sure you can relate. So how does not enough sleep affect us as parents? It slows our thinking, makes us more irritable. Like I said, our memories do not get stored in a place where we can use them, so we have trouble remembering things. It leads to more depression and more anxiety. The link between not enough sleep and depression and anxiety is pretty clear in the research. Weight gain is a big one because when you don't get enough sleep, your body craves more sugar and more carbohydrates, and so all those cravings kind of come in, and we don't have the self-control or the will when we're tired. The next point on the effects on you is that I put question marks around it just because it's a pretty sensitive thing to say. It can lead to, because I talk to a lot of families about this kind of thing, and it can lead to resenting your child. It can lead to anger towards your child when they're waking you up in the night again, when they're tantruming at 9 p.m. when they should have been asleep by 7:30. We can get angry, we can snap, and we can lose it, and we can just build up this resentment of my kids keep me awake all night, or I don't get enough sleep because of my kids. And the subtle messages that can send even during the day can have a big impact on your relationship with your child. The effect on your children is it affects their behavioral control. It affects their emotional regulation, and Kate's going to talk a lot more about this. It affects their own memory and their cognitive functioning. So their school performance, their academic ability to learn. their energy levels, a lot of daytime sleepiness. But in a young child, like the 5, 6, 7-year-olds, that will still look like, that won't look like nodding off in class. That will still look like wired and acting out, and that behavioral control, if they don't have just a nice, calm energy level. It can also increase their risk of developing depression or anxiety. So if your child has some level of anxiety, whether it's around sleep or all day long, it's a downward spiral if they're not getting enough sleep, and one affects the other. And it also leads to increased risk of childhood obesity. So those are some really big selfless reasons to work on helping your child get enough sleep. So this looks like a kind of a funny picture to the side, but I'm going to talk to why it's important in a minute. But knowing how much sleep is enough is step one. Okay, if you think your child is getting enough sleep because they're in bed, they sleep for 8 or 9 hours a night, that's an adult normal night's sleep. We need 8 to 9 hours straight every night. But a child, up to about age 8, they need about 11 or 12 hours of straight consolidated sleep a night. There's some exceptions, and I know everybody always thinks their child is the exception, and then they go through a sleep, behavioral sleep training program, and their child suddenly starts sleeping way more than they thought they ever needed, because now they know how, and now they have confidence around sleep. So it's important to give your child the opportunity to sleep as much as their body needs, to find out how much their body needs. So for a child, from a baby up to age 8, and in the baby years, they need naps and stuff during the day, but it's 11 to 12 hours straight. And for a child aged, 9 to 12, before they hit teenage years, that can go down to about 10 hours a night. But again, getting them to bed earlier and help them build the skills and the confidence to fall asleep quickly and easily is the best way to find out how much your child needs. The quality also matters. Quality really matters. So it's not just, are they in bed for that long, is, do they have unbroken sleep or consolidated sleep? So if they're in bed for 12 hours or sleeping 7 to 7, but they're up 3 times a night coming into your room, and you're negotiating going back, and you're lying down with them and going through that whole circus every night, their night is broken. And what that does is it prevents them from getting that deep restorative sleep that they need to, regulate their emotions and remember things that they've learned, and all of those cognitive functions. So now to the picture to the right of the screen, if your child is mouth breathing, so this is not a normal position or normal posture for a child to be sleeping in. I know this child is in a stroller. It's the best image I could find in a pinch, but with their mouth wide open, if they're snoring, it doesn't have to be snoring, but if they are snoring, that's another sign that we're going to look out for. If they're incredibly restless, like we all move around all night, and up until about age 4 or 5, kids tend to move more in bed. But once they hit about age 4 or 5, they should, be relatively in the same place in the morning as when they were in the evening, not like feet hanging off the bed and at the other end and covers all over the place. I talked to one family whose child, they found their head was on the nightstand and their feet were on the bed at one point in the night. It sounds funny, but it's actually like extreme restlessness and mouth breathing and snoring are all indications of poor quality of sleep and possible sleep apnea. So your child actually not being able to continue breathing through the night. And that is a sign that you need to, and this can affect behavior and cognition and emotional regulation and all of those things. So these are really important signs to bring up with your doctor and get a referral probably to an ear, nose, throat, an ENT doctor. To check to see whether they actually have enlarged tonsils, enlarged adenoids, and need those removed. Personal example, my daughter just had her tonsils out. We were kind of waiting about 3 years and playing the conservative route. She was snoring and mouth breathing and fairly restless at night, but ENTs now, they're very conservative and they only take tonsils out in cases of sleep apnea, and where it's really affecting the child. I've taken advantage of Kate's services from time to time to work on behavioral issues with my own child. But for all intents and purposes, she was behaving and acting as a normal child. She fell asleep easily and slept through the night, not because she's special, but because I worked pretty hard on it and hired someone like me 6 years ago. And so she has been sleeping long enough, but oh my gosh, the difference in her behavior and in her ability to be adaptable and to just be accepting of the word no, and just really simple things like that after getting a better quality sleep. Like there's just no doubt that she's getting a better quality sleep now that she's not mouth breathing like this kid, snoring and things like that. So those are some things to look out for. If your child, has a lot of anxiety around sleep and isn't sleeping well, is their sleep quality physically restricted by enlarged tonsils or adenoids? So that's the only sort of medical thing to look out for that I'm going to talk about today. The rest is really usually about habits and behaviors. Before I go into routine, I'm going to hand it over to Kate and let her talk about how to talk to your child about all those big feelings.
All right. Perfect dovetail, Hilary. I always like to have this information handy because that's a big, big piece around behavior is if children aren't getting good enough sleep. I mean, we know what it's like when we're kind of haven't had a good night's sleep when we're grumpy. And we're adults, we have pretty good emotional control, but children, it makes such a huge difference when they're not getting good quality sleep.
Mm-hmm.
So I want to talk about a bit about the brain. Hilary started discussing that, and I'm going to go into my screen share too to show you all. So here I talk about big feelings, and anxiety or fear at nighttime is one of those big feelings. So I have a whole course on guiding big feelings, and a lot of what I do is supporting parents around emotion regulation and behavioral adaptations in the home. So let's look at the brain. Don't get too don't get intimidated by all these big words, okay? Because we don't need to know all of them. I've color coded. I want you to appreciate how I've color coded the words on the one side with the structure, so you can kind of figure it out if you just match up the colors. So the main thing to think about is the structure of the brain that's involved with alert or alarm. That's the smoke detector, the amygdala, which is this middle part right in the center of the brain. That's that really primitive part of the brain. And like the smoke detector in our homes, it's there for safety. It's there to keep us alive. And so far as a species, we're doing pretty good about staying alive. Like we're good as humans. And the smoke detector also, as we know, goes off when you've just opened the oven or you burnt toast a little bit. Like it's not a fire, it's not a big danger, but it's going off. And of course, when the smoke detector goes off, you can't really ignore it. That's the main thing that's happening, and you got to open the window and air it out and, get that to stop. That's exactly how the brain works as well. It prioritizes the smoke detector or the amygdala, also known as part of the limbic system. So when children are upset, scared, or hurt, or mad, then that part of the brain is prioritizing. So that's the part that we have to pay attention to. We have to soothe that alarm center of the brain, or we're not really going to get anywhere with getting anyone to sleep. Of course, when you're terrified, there's no way you're going to be able to sleep. But there's a piece of anxiety that's key, and that is that trying to avoid an anxiety-provoking situation can actually perpetuate it. So we want to actually get children to get used to a tolerable level of anxiety. That builds resilience, and it builds that ability to handle stress and to self-regulate. Now, children under the age of 4 or 5 are very poor at self-regulation because this part of the brain, the prefrontal cortex, is not fully formed until, wait for it, 25. So kids under the age of 8, still not great, but this is the complex thinking part of the brain up front there. That's part of executive functions and emotion regulation. So we do have to teach these skills. That's the important thing. Just like we're teaching reading and numbers, we actually have to teach emotion regulation. So a simple way to think about this is that we have an upstairs brain and a downstairs brain. The upstairs brain is the cortex, and the prefrontal cortex in particular. And if you have your hand, the inside part is the amygdala with the other parts in there, the hippocampus, which is one of the things that Hilary mentioned, that's storing new learning into memory, the filing system of the brain. That's all the inside, the brain stem, which is the breathing, heart rate, swallowing, hypothalamus, hunger, all that. So when children ask for a drink of water or a snack before bed, that's also part of regulation. So you want to make sure you're giving that ahead of bedtime so that they are regulated. Okay, and then up front, we've got the prefrontal cortex up here. So a simple way of looking at that is the downstairs brain is here, and that's where all the big feelings reside. And when children are upset, they've flipped their lid, so they're not able to make good choices. They're in their big feelings part of their brain. But when they're calm, they can make good choices. And this goes for us as well. When we've flipped our lid and when we're at the end of our rope at the end of the day, and we're just wanting to give in to the child because we want them to just go to bed, then we're not making the best choice, which might be the more long-term solution around helping them soothe themselves. So connection is something that calms big feelings, and your self inner resources are going to be a big asset to your children. That's why I talk about the concept of co-regulation. Now, you're going to be going from co-regulation, which means you staying calm before children are heading to bed and making sure that the rhythm of the household comes down. This is also important to think about, that you are likely to feel triggered or upset by your children's behavior, and particularly their fear. That's going to trigger your protective instinct as a parent, which is a wonderful instinct. It's why children are so well cared for now. And the fact that you're even watching this seminar means that you're probably one of the top 10% of parents who really care about your children and want the best for them. So you want to also understand that children and their behavior is going to affect you internally. You're going to feel it. You can see this photo. It's like these energetic force fields surround us, and we pick up on each other's emotions. So it's important for you to understand that your children's emotions are not yours. So you want to allow them to have an emotional experience, and remember that emotions come and go, and that you are helping them manage a tolerable level of stress so that they can build resilience as they grow older. I mentioned it before, but this is just another little infographic about how children learn skills. And all children learn skills within relationships. So first we do it for them, then we do it with them, then we help them do it, and then they can do it by themselves. So this goes for emotional regulation. We have to teach them how to breathe, how to calm their body down, and then eventually they can do it on their own. So I want to talk about emotion coaching. That's a big part of what I do. If you don't already have enough jobs as a parent, this is one more I want you to put as your sort of hat to wear. As an emotion coach, what you're doing is you are allowing your child to have their own emotional experience, but you're there to provide empathy and guidance. And the purpose of that is to help them grow and build that prefrontal cortex, that emotion regulation part of their brain, as well as turning on that planning and problem solving part of their brain. Of course, as adults, we often know the solution to their emotional problems, and we want to come in with logic. Oh, you really, really want that orange cup, but it's in the dishwasher. You can't have the orange cup because it's dirty right now. The child is still having a meltdown about the orange cup because that's what they really wanted. Or they're still harping on the fact that they want to go to the playground and play with their friends right now, even though we're all stuck inside. They're going to keep going with that because it doesn't matter the amount of logic we give, it's not going to help soothe them. So what we want to do is we want to use emotional moments to connect. So that requires number one, which is an emotional awareness about ourselves as adults. That's a piece of the puzzle that you're responsible for. Understanding your own emotions, and of course, we're heightened right now because we're in a pandemic. So understanding how emotions function and how your own emotions are part of the picture is really key, because you need to see that children have a different way of expressing emotions and they may not make sense to you. In fact, often children's emotions don't make a lot of sense. So we have emotional awareness. We use emotional moments as an opportunity to connect and provide guidance to children. We listen with empathy and honor their emotions. Now, this at bedtime is going to be within limits, right? Because this is not the time to have a huge long conversation about worries, but providing some talk time in the evening is a good idea, because that's when children's brains are slowing down and they get to more of that emotional material, which is often what you find. They'll come home from a school or an activity and ask them how their day was, and they're like, fine. But then towards the end of the day, they say, I didn't really like it when they were playing and they didn't let me join the game. So you start getting some of that more emotional material later in the day. You want to help your children identify and name their emotions. And I want to say, as parents in general, you all are doing a very good job at this. Children come to me for counseling and they already know words like frustration and jealousy. I had a kid use, a 6-year-old use the word exasperated the other day. So I thought, you know what, this is great. Parents are using this information and reading books about emotions and talking about their own emotions in front of their children in a way that helps them identify it better. And the last step is to support children to explore their own solutions to their problems. Of course, we know, and we want to give them a quick solution, but that doesn't help them exercise that part of their brain that's that real planning, problem, executive function part of their brain. And Hilary's going to talk about some pieces of her plan where children can be active participants in this solution and problem solving part. Now, remember, we're in an emergency right now. So I think I know it's been a distant memory because we haven't been on an airplane for a while, but you need to give yourself oxygen first. So what that means is if you've got more than one adult in the home at this time, you want to work on getting some space and time for yourself so that you can really put the oxygen mask on and bring yourself down and bring your immune system down to a more calm level, because we're all heightened right now. And we're not able to really think through things as easily and quickly when we're not calm. So you've done a great job keeping your children safe and keeping them fed. I want you to focus on good enough parenting for the next little while. If they wear pajamas for 3 days straight, this is not harmful. If they're watching more TV and videos, this is not going to kill them. As a professional, I want you to not feel guilty about the fact that you are just trying to keep your children alive in a pandemic right now. So using your own self-regulation strategies is going to be key, and that takes time. Moments away from children is a very good thing. And just focusing on pausing and breathing when you're upset, that's all the homework I need you to work on for the next little while. So guiding big feelings is something that prepares children for life. I've got more information about that. I have a whole course, a web course on my website if you want to check it out. And of course, I'm available for individual consults because I know some children's emotions are just a little bit trickier and they require some specialized parenting. So we'll talk about how to get in touch with us after this. And back to you, Hilary.
Thank you, Kate. Thank you, Kate.
Welcome.
I say that in so many ways. This woman's been in my corner for a while. So back to sleep. All that stuff is so important to go through the day in order to prepare your child to be in a place where they are calm, and it's that anxiety hasn't been escalating throughout the day with very little control or regulation from either party in the household before leading up to bedtime. So one of the things I'm going to walk you guys through right now is a preparation for bedtime, how to prepare them for bedtime with a routine. Everyone knows that routine is important. Just like Kate said, you guys are probably the top 10% of parents who are like reading this stuff and signing up for webinars and paying attention to your children's emotions and caring about their how much sleep they actually get as a part of their overall health. So what I'm going to talk you through is part 1 of my total program that I give to families with kids age 5 to 10 on how to get them sleeping confidently, securely, on their own, in their own bed, all night and through the night. Those are the goals that I work on with families. And it starts with routine. So I'm going to walk you guys through all of that. And I will talk at the end if you need the whole package and you need the whole one-on-one support, I'm going to talk to you at the end about how to get that. But basically, kids thrive on routine. You probably know this, but it creates a sense of predictability. And when there's a sense of predictability and that doesn't change, and this is a great time to solidify this if you haven't in your family already, because we're not going anywhere. There is 100% consistency possible right now because no one's traveling. We don't have evening plans. Parents are not working late, or we're all home. So this actually is a great time to solidify routines in, not all day. We're all letting our kids watch a little more videos so that we can actually work from home or whatever it is, but at least for bedtime. And when there's more predictability, there's less negotiation and there's less pushback. If it's the same every night and you're clear with them ahead of time about how this is going to go, eventually that pushback and the negotiations for one more this and one more that, they fade away. And I think from what Kate just talked about, the negotiations of one more this or one more that indicate a lack of self-regulating. So, you know, it all works cyclically together. If your child has a bath or shower every night, you can start with that. And if they don't, and you don't need to bathe or shower your child every day, of course, some sort of wash down routine in the bathroom, sitting on the counter or up on a stool and washing everything down, can really help kind of signify, okay, you know what, daytime's over, nighttime is beginning. We're moving in a different direction. And Kate talked about moving the, taking the energy of the household down a little bit. You can dim lights if you want. You can start to close curtains a little bit. Just take everything down and start to say, okay, you know what? All of that randomness or all of that daytime stuff, that's ending and we're moving into something different now. And, if you want to give them a bedtime snack, you can. Keep it nice and short, keep it nice and small. Couple of stories, or for older kids, like the 7, 8, 9-year-olds, a couple of chapters. And you be really clear ahead of time about how much, and keep it the same every night if you can, so that there isn't that negotiation or that fighting that can kind of sometimes crop up. I do not recommend Harry Potter at bedtime or anything like it. We want to plant some nice little sleep seeds, not the scary stuff. So read Harry Potter in the morning if your kid's into it and loves it and wants to do that stuff, but we don't need to ramp up their anxiety. I'm watching a Netflix program right now at the end of the day, which maybe I shouldn't, because it's espionage and spies, and it brings up my anxiety while I'm watching it, and that's the opposite of what you want to have happen right before bed. So pick something light, pick something engaging, but pick something really light and fun. And then that tuck in and review the day. And again, just like Kate said, this should be pretty short. You don't want to get in a long discussion about emotions and events of the day, but just a quick little ritual that you do. What was your favorite thing that happened today? Or what are you most excited about for tomorrow? Or something like that. That's a little ritual. And if it's similar every night, it becomes a little sort of rubber stamp on the end of their day. And you can get creative with how you do this, especially with the younger kids. You can use clip art. If your child's older and can draw and make fabulously creative rainbow star posters, they can do a poster about how their bedtime routine goes, and they can call it something fun like their wind down time or something like that. But really make the bedtime routine a time to connect. As much as this takes us as parents, especially now that we're with our kids 24/7, you got to take that time to yourself so that you have the wherewithal to connect with them at bedtime. At the end of the day, I know my husband and I have looked at each other across the dinner table and said, all right, guys, go put yourselves to bed. We're done. But really use it as a time to connect so that they're not crying out for it. If you make a point of it, there's less crying out for it. And it can become your favorite time of day. So here are 7 ways to tap into your child's nervous system. So, one thing I will just mention, Kate asked me to do this. There's this sort of 7 steps to relax the mind and body for bedtime is based on a program called Relax Kids out of the UK. They have a whole gamut of kid programs. This one is taken from their bedtime relaxation program. And it's 7 ways to tap into their nervous system on different levels. And when Kate talked about how the brain functions. So there's the upstairs brain and the downstairs brain. There's the amygdala is the thumb, and that's the big feelings and the anxiety. And then the upstairs brain, that prefrontal cortex that can kind of calm down the downstairs brain. Another fun way for the younger kids to talk about that too, that some of the kids that I've worked with have really liked and have taken and run with. It's so cool to see them learn neuroscience, but is the 3 brains. There's or you can use 2 if you want, the squirrel brain, the elephant brain, and the owl brain. This is how Relax Kids teaches it. The squirrel brain is that squirrel, if you picture a squirrel like eating a nut, and they jump at every sound. It's almost like their amygdala is always on fire and it's always prioritized in their brain. They're just always alert and every sound kind of sends off their alarm bell, and they stop eating their nut and they look around nervously. And when everything's okay, they can start eating their nut again. But they are on alert all the time. That's the squirrel, and that's the brain that's on alert, that's active when your child is experiencing those big emotions and anxiety. Then there's the elephant brain that goes, oh, wait a second, remember? Because elephants remember. Most kids between age 5 and 10 know this, that elephants have great memories. That they remember that, wait a second, that's just my squirrel brain talking. And then the owl brain knows how to quiet the squirrel brain, the owl brain being the upstairs brain in that prefrontal cortex. The owl brain says, now, squirrel, enough of you. You're too chattery. Quiet down. I am calm and wise. And get kids to kind of know that they actually have a part of themselves that can quiet their own squirrel brain. So depending on the age of the child, and upstairs brain, downstairs brain, or it's the squirrel, the elephant, and the owl, whichever one you think is going to appeal to your child, it's a great way to talk to them about what it is that's actually going on in their minds. So how to relax the mind and body before bed. This means you're going to be spending longer in the bedtime routine, but it's worth it. And this does not need to be long. This can be like, each of these can be 2 or 3 minutes. Okay, there's 7 steps. The first one is move. Turn on one song, a 3-minute song, and everyone has a wild dance party. No holds barred. Just don't hit each other. Just go crazy and dance around and get the whales out. They can do jumping jacks, or you can play in a game of indoor tag. We had a game of hall soccer the other night that was hysterical. Everybody got hurt, but you know what? It all worked out in the end. But something to get their heart rates up and get their energy, that kind of nervous energy, kind of get it somewhere to go. And then once that's over, and it's good to do it to a song, dancing to a song is fun because it has a beginning and an end. So at the end of it, everyone takes a big deep breath. And then we move right to station 2. And if you do it in stations and you got it all set up and you've got time to do the pre-work, that this can work well, then you bring their focus in. Okay, you've got the wiggles out, you've got all that nervous energy out, you bring their focus in to, you read a story, or you do a craft. And I'll talk about how you can use that craft in a later step, but you could be something like every night your child gets to cut out and color a cloud out of cardboard, or a star or a moon. And we'll talk about something we can do with that later. Then the next part is stretch. Once you finish the craft, you can get them into their pajamas now, do that wash down in the bathroom routine, or bath or something like that. And then once they're in the pajamas, they can do say goodnight to the sun, and everybody does like 3 sun salutations, or we make tree shapes with our body, but some way to kind of stretch their body to tap into their nervous system from a physical perspective. Like that's a lot of what yoga does, is just tapping into your nervous system in a different way. The next one is feel. So deep pressure can have a very calming effect on a human's nervous system. Think about it when someone like takes your hand and gives it a squeeze. It's very comforting. Or they put their hands on, your arms or your shoulders and gives you a really firm touch. It's comforting, right? So one fun way to do this with young kids is if they're like sort of, the 4, 5, 6, 7 age, a pizza massage. And you can get in a little train if there's a bunch of kids in your family, where everybody's giving each other a pizza massage. And the way you do the pizza massage is you knead the dough into their back. So that's deep pressure. Then you put on the sauce with the palm of your hand, rubbing in a circular motion. And then you can press in the pepperoni. That's deep pressure, and give it a little press. Like you're actually providing deep pressure into their muscles and their ligaments and their joints, so that their nervous system gets a calming sort of control message. So just pressing into their body. And then they can sprinkle cheese with the tips of their fingers. Okay. It's a really fun 2-minute thing. And some of the kids I've worked with have loved this part. And it's physical connection with their parents. They want our connection. They want our attention all the time. And this is a really hands-on way to give it. And then breathe. Kate talked about that pausing and breathing. And she mentioned 3, and that was not accidental. 3 deep breaths with your belly, using your diaphragm, with complete full exhales, like those kinds of breaths. 3 of them is enough to turn the volume down on your own stress level, which your children will pick up on. Okay. So one fun way to do this with littler kids is blowing the candles out on your hand, or using a pinwheel. So you put your fingers up and they blow out the candles on a cake. And as they do, one finger goes down. The next is believe. And this is where you can use that craft of a cloud or a star or something that you drew, and they get to write a word, a positive word in their cloud or their star and stick it to their wall. And as you go on, they can have like, 22 stars or clouds on the wall. And that should be all you need, because they've, if you've gone through the entire program, they're getting really confident and really comfortable with falling asleep on their own by the end of 3 or 4 weeks. So, it's great to have all these calm, relaxing, positive, powerful words stuck to their wall. And then you can use sticky notes, and they can cut them out into the shape of a cloud or a star or something like that. Or you can come up with a mantra. So like, I am strong, calm, and wise. And, you repeat it 3 times or something ritualistic like that. Kids love repetition. Kids love routine. And this is another way to add it in. And the last part they can do in their bed. And you can do this with them. Again, like Kate said, you move from doing it with them to them learn, and then you do it together, and then they learn how to do it on their own. So they can do a visualization like they are chocolate melting down an ice cream mountain or something into their chocolate bed or something like that. Or a yoga nidra. And if you've not heard of yoga nidra, nidra means this is the yoga of sleep. And it is, download one yourself. Oh my gosh, we should all be doing yoga nidra every day. But there's some really good 15-minute recordings on YouTube or iTunes that you can download. And it's like a progressive muscle relaxation, but a little bit more, it seems a little bit more vague, but like anything ancient, if it didn't work, it wouldn't have stuck around for 2,000 years. Yoga nidra is a really ancient scientific way of tapping into your nervous system in a very calming way. I have a friend who's a yoga teacher, and he says, I would love to know how yoga nidra ends. He's never gotten to the end of a yoga nidra. He falls asleep before the end of it every time. But it's a really, really nice way to calm the body and mind before bed. So you can use a yoga nidra recording, and there's one specifically for kids that are shorter, that are 5 or 10 minutes long, or you can do a visualization with them. Okay, so that is part of what I talk families through when I work with them one-on-one. And, this 7-step is a way just to set them up for being able to relax around sleep and being able to use the education that Kate talked about, the upstairs and downstairs brain, or the squirrel, elephant, owl brains, to know that when they feel those big feelings coming up, and I highly recommend the program she's going to talk about at the end, the big feelings, how to talk to your kids about big feelings, because they need to learn what those big feelings are, and that they can turn the volume down on their own big feelings. It's really, really empowering. Now, so this slide I just wanted to put in because I think most parents who have a child age 5 to 10 who is anxious around sleep, we often will lie down with them to help calm their fears, or have them come into our bed, where they come into our bed and we're either too tired or don't have any other options for what to do in those moments. And bed sharing is really sort of like putting the Band-Aid on the issue. So just to kind of to sum everything up, if I had a picture on this slide, it would be an elephant in a room, I think. But because I think everybody on this call probably is having their child sleep with them or sleeping in your child's bed some of the time, or all of the time, or part of the night. And what's wrong with bed sharing with your child? We all want to be there for our kids, and we all want to do the right thing for them. And that's usually where bed sharing comes in, is we are trying to be as supportive as we can. We are here for you, is what we want to tell our children. Like, do not worry, I am going to be with you. And really what we need to do is guide them to a place where they know that we're there for them, of course, but they have the confidence and the resilience to be there for themselves as well, in something as fundamental to health as sleep. So, what's wrong with bed sharing? Like, if your child doesn't require your presence, sometimes you're there, sometimes you're not. Sometimes you fall asleep reading them the story, and then you wake up at 2 o'clock in the morning and go into your own bed, no big deal. If everyone is sleeping through the night, if you're getting 8 straight hours of sleep, if your child is getting 11 plus hours of sleep every night and not waking up in the night, if both parents are on board with this situation, then I'm never nothing's wrong with it. Essentially, I'm never going to tell parents to never share a bed with their children if all those other things are working out okay. But where it becomes problematic is if your child needs you present physically in order to do something as fundamental and basic as falling asleep. We all develop this ability as children, as babies probably, and our kids need to develop this in order to prevent all of the sort of risks that we mentioned earlier. Because there is a 20% increase in a chance of the child developing anxiety around sleep if they are chronically bed sharing. We do it for the opposite reason. We do it to help them feel secure. We do it for all the right reasons. But unfortunately, in a lot of cases, it's having the opposite effect. It helps it kind of teaches the child that they need you to do this very basic thing, that they can't do it on their own. And we need to move into guiding them into that confident place. Often there's greater sleep disturbance for both parent and child. I can't sleep with a foot in my ribs at all. Definitely not with a foot in my face. So there's definitely greater sleep disturbance for both parents and kids. It usually also creates a greater sleep onset latency, which takes a longer time for the child to fall asleep if there's someone else in the bed with them, which means less sleep overall. It's socially limiting for a child. So for the big kids, and most of the people on this webinar today have bigger kids who want to have sleepovers, or their friends are having sleepovers, or summer camps, or parents needing to go away or wanting to go away for a weekend and someone else coming to stay with them. It's socially limiting for the child, and it also has a big impact on the parents' relationship. That's why there's the elephant in the room graphic would be appropriate here, is because it often affects the parents' relationship as well. So I'll talk a little bit about how I work with families and why I work with families like yours. If my intention was to give you guys something that you can start using today, and I'll go back in a second and you can screenshot why don't I do that right now, actually? You guys can screenshot this 7-step part, and you can move, if you've got Kate or myself in the corner of your screen, you can just click and move, drag us to a spot where it's not blocking any of the tips. But I'll just leave it for a few more seconds so you can screenshot this page if you want. And this is something you can implement today. If your child just has a hard time winding down, or they just kind of express their fears at night, this can really, really help with that, along with what Kate talked about. But when you're just too overwhelmed and exhausted to DIY this, that's where it can be really helpful to have someone walk you through it and check in with you every day for a few weeks. And also give you the more complete plan of when the problems are kind of too big to solve with these basic additions to your routine and these changes. When the problems are your child cannot fall asleep on their own, if they're tantruming in the middle of the night, they're tantruming at bedtime, and you've been bed sharing or in an unhealthy way for years, and you need to somehow gradually remove yourself from your child's process of falling asleep, that's where someone like me can come in. If you find that you kind of know what to do, but you're caving in the middle of the night, because having someone to be accountable to in the morning really helped me when I was doing this work with my child when she was a baby. Knowing that I was going to be checking in with someone the next day kept me on track with the plan. I had a clear plan, 7 pages printed out on my bedside that I was following all night long for what to do in the middle of the night, what to do if this happens, what to do if that happens. It can really, really help keep both parents on board and keep both parents on the same page. It also takes what I diplomatically call the debate out between parents in the middle of the night. If you're arguing outside the door of your child's bedroom in the middle of the night, then having a third party walk you both through the same steps and the same plan can just eliminate all of that. And if you want it to go as quickly and easily as possible so that you're not kind of trial and erroring different methods with your child, and if you've walked them back to their room poker faced 100 times in the last 4 months and it's not changing the actual behavior, then that might be the indication. That's a good time to bring in something more. Okay. So a one-to-one support program that I do, I know this child's a little bit young, but I just love this family. They're friends of mine, and we work together, and they sent me this picture. I'm like, oh, please. That's one of those ones that you get in the frame when you buy the photo frame. This is the shot that comes in it. But when I work with families one-to-one, what you would get, if this is something you're considering, or if something you're debating or wanting to go ahead with, I'll talk to you about how to do that after, or you'll get information on how to do that after. But here's what it looks like is I do a 90-minute consult one-on-one after I get a questionnaire from you all about your child's health and activities and patterns and behaviors and sleep. And I'll use that to create a plan that's specific to your child. Generic enough that I know it's going to work, but specific enough that it will work for your child. So when it usually takes us about an hour and a half to walk through that one-on-one in Zoom or something like this. Okay. And if your child is old enough, I get your child on the call too, because having the quote unquote, the sleep lady, as a third party to kind of be accountable to helps a lot of kids. It really gets them on board. And for the older kids, sort of 8, 9, 10, I'll do my check-ins on Zoom with them. And kids now are so used to talking to people through a computer screen that it doesn't faze them. And they'll sit down and they'll do the follow-up with me. And they'll say, well, last night, it was pretty good. And my mom just tucked me down. She's only sitting by the door now. And the kid will actually talk me through the check-in. And so that can really, really help with getting them on board and accountability. I'll answer all your questions along the way. So I check in daily or as needed, semi-daily for big kids really, because the change happens a little slower. 3 weeks, 4 weeks, more if needed, less if you don't. And I'm there to answer questions as we go along. And then long-term, if you have follow-up that you need, I have these one quick question options that you can always access. And so what I'll do now is hand it back over to Kate, and she can talk about a program that's on her website that you can look at today and how to get one-on-one support from her. And when this webinar ends, it should take you to a screen that will show you how to connect with both Kate and I if you're wanting more support and more information like this to help your child sleep. Okay? Back to you, Kate.
Okay, so can everybody hear me? Can you hear me, Hilary?
Yes.
I know there's some part of us that's getting muted each time. But the keys that I want to just communicate as far as ongoing support is that what we've told you today is going to be useful for a large proportion of families, but there's going to be some children that require specialized parenting. If you have a child who is highly sensitive or a little more spirited or persistent and intense with their behavior, then it's going to be tricky to get an hour's worth of a workshop that's going to work for your whole family and to support your child. So what I do is I provide individualized support for families. And one of the things that is sort of the next step is I have a program called Guiding Big Feelings, which I showed you a couple of slides that I kind of picked out. But on my website, I'll show you, go to counselorkate.com and you'll see up in the top there's the shop. And I've got a few things that I'm working on, but the main one is the Guiding Big Feelings video lesson. So I've cut the price down to just under $20. And that one is about an hour's worth, but there's lots of activities inside. And it's all a kind of continuation of what I've talked about today. So that one just gives you a nice multimedia emotion regulation for adults and children. So both of you, as you've probably understood, it's a collaborative process. Both of you have work to do, but you're the one who's going to be leading that. And then of course, I'm a counselor. I'm a registered clinical counselor in BC. And I have always worked online, but I'm of course working 100% online now. So I do workshops and I do consultations and counseling with parents and children directly through this online platform, the same one we're on right now. So I do all kinds of things. I do parent coaching, so to support you as parents. And that's just whatever parents need to kind of work through their own challenges. Of course, I provide individual therapy if you're really realizing, wow, I thought I was better at emotion regulation, but I guess I'm not. You didn't realize that part of this pandemic is in fact emotion regulation boot camp. You didn't realize, but you've signed yourself up for intensive emotion regulation boot camp. That's what's happening right now. In case you didn't notice, your fuse is shorter, your kids are around all the time, you're trying to balance work and perhaps your relationship. So there's definitely stuff coming up. Let's put it that way. I've had a few phone calls. And then I do something unique called parent-child interaction therapy. And that is where I watch you and your child through a video webcam. And then I call you in your phone and I talk to you through your earpiece and coach you in real time based on a behavior support plan. So all of these things are available online, which is the good news. And I love taking a step into your homes and helping support what's going on right in the moment. So just get in touch with me. Hilary will share that information at the end. And just, I want you to know you're doing a really good job. If you're watching this webinar right now, you're doing a good job. Children only need one good enough parent who responds about 50% of the time appropriately. So that's the standard that's required. If you're doing better than that, you're probably doing awesome. So just remember, cut the expectations down. So, and I want everyone to use a little humor. Try and find something to make yourself laugh in these times, because we have to survive it emotionally as well as physically.
Jimmy Fallon's The Tonight Show Home Edition with his 3-year-old and 5-year-old crawling all over him is great for that. It's good humor. You're like, right. He said that in recent news, the Olympics has been postponed. They're instead going to give the medals out to anyone with a child under 5.
Totally.
Stuck at home with a child under 5.
If you've got 2 or 3 children under 5, you get extras.
Yes, that's right. Multiple gold medals.
Yeah.
Yeah. So just to echo what Kate said, and to also give a testimonial, I can't believe you're selling all that information for $19 because it's so helpful.
Pandemic pricing.
Pandemic pricing. I'm also doing pandemic pricing. So I'm taking $100 off my regular Big Kid program. And you'll see that at the end. But for anyone who needs it right now, because to do this and to be in this time without a full night's sleep, I'm not sure I would be doing a very good job. I'm not sure I would be meeting the 50% of good enough parenting all the time. But I have heard that before from Kate, that really real piece of information that children to turn out just fine. They just need one good enough parent responding appropriately half the time. That has saved me so many times. I have repeated that to myself. I'm like, it's going to be okay. It's all going to be okay. But yeah, I can't say enough about how much help you've been to me and my family. And the play interaction therapy was like a little light switch miracle in my house. And I recommend it. I recommend it to every family that I work with. I talked them through a little bit of it, and I was like, if you'd like more, I know the person for you. So yeah, if you need any more support in your parenting journey, there'll be information at the end of this webinar. When it ends, it should take you to a page of how to contact Kate, how to contact me. I'd be happy to help you guys get enough sleep. And thank you for joining us today. I hope you all have a great weekend, and let us know if you have any questions anytime.
You bet. Have a good sleep, everybody.
Yeah, take care.